Good evening. This is the Education Verdict. Straight questions, real answers, no fluff. Co-powered by Class Sathi and Sana Enterprises. Last week, 3 young people sat in these chairs. One dropped out and built a global cybersecurity career without a single degree. One walked away from fashion college and became a celebrity makeup artist. One graduated on time and spent 2 years wondering why none of it worked. And together, they said something that made a lot of people uncomfortable. That college, as we know it, may no longer be worth what we are paying for it. Now, before you forward that episode to your 18-year-old and say, see, I told you so, we owe those young people something. We owe them the other side of that conversation. Because 3 young people with 3 personal stories, however honest, are not a policy. They are not a prescription. And the question they raised deserves to be taken seriously by the people who have actually spent their careers inside this system. Tonight, we do exactly that. Maheshwer Peri has spent decades tracking the gap between what Indian higher education promises and what it delivers. He built Careers 360 because that gap was not being measured honestly. He has data that most people in this industry do not want to see published. We have Saurabh Nanda, who is a career mentor. He does not sell degrees. He does not run a college. He sits with students and parents in the most anxious moments of their lives and help them make a decision they will not regret. He hears both sides every single day. 2 people, 2 different relationships with the same system. Let us see if they agree on anything. Is college still worth it? Last week, a young man who taught himself cybersecurity and earned the OSCP certification said this: the system was the risk, not him. A young woman who walked away from her fashion degree said she learned more in 6 months with working professionals than in 2 years of college. And a graduate who did everything right spent 2 years wondering why his degree meant nothing in any interview room. Before we go anywhere else tonight, I want each of you to respond to that directly. Not to defend your position, not to dismiss theirs, but to tell me honestly, were they wrong?
Yeah, in a certain sense. See, the thing is, we're trying to confuse what is a learning part of the ecosystem to skilling and trade school part of the ecosystem. We're trying to merge the two and trying to compare one against the other. Life is not about ROI and transactional relationships. Life is much more than that. If it's all transactional, then the richest people in the country would not want to send their children to school or college. They still make them go there because there is something which is learning that happens. There are different perspectives. You meet different people. You learn different perspectives. You try to weigh one against the other. What we call at this point in time is, oh, I am anyway going to be a cybersecurity person, so why should I know anything about anything else? Is the worst thing that you can get into because you don't understand the other side then. And when you don't understand the other side, your growth will get stunted at some point in time because you only know one part of the story and you don't know anything else beyond that. See, the learning is much beyond that. Some of the people, the younger people at some point in time, and by the way, I'm not blaming anyone. I do know that it's being taught at the trade schools and skill schools of why are you wasting your time in a degree kind of a thing. A lot of very, very successful people know a lot of useless things. What these people call useless is something that is very important for you to know because they call it useless. But a student who is learning math should know history also to a certain extent. A person who's learning history must also know data analysis at some point in time. Now, if you're trying to work in silos, then you'll always find conflicts because one is fighting to win a battle and not trying to understand the other perspective and then trying to find a better solution. So to that extent, degree or anything that you have gives you a broader understanding of many things and not just of a skill that you'll ultimately use to get some money out of it because you are employable only in that skill.
Your take, Saurabh.
The three students, I mean, congratulations, they are, brilliant, and I wish them all the best. But they're outliers. I mean, did we talk to the other 40 students in the classroom in the college that they were in? What are they doing, right? They probably have taken that traditional route, which we think is not, risk averse and all that. It is about career decision making. What degree teaches you is learning how to learn, how to unlearn, so that later on in life, you don't have to repeat the same mistakes again. Now, some of those students will learn through experience. That is how human beings are. Psychology tells us we will learn through experience anyhow. Now, do you want a structured experience which can fasten that learning curve? That is available in a college. Now, the cybersecurity student, fantastic. Now, he has built something for himself. What if there is somebody else who wants to learn the same, but in a more structured manner, in a shorter amount of time? Would he like to do a master's in cybersecurity from a good college where they have incorporated all the learnings that these young people have? Probably yes, right? I know people in their 60s who are going to Cambridge to learn AI. Why are they going to Cambridge to learn AI where Anthropic Academy and Open AI Academy is already available? Because there is structured learning available, there is peer group learning available, there is learning available which allows you to choose what to learn and what not to learn. You can discuss that with your professors. Those nuances are missing.
And Ravi, just to add to what Saurabh said, see, we shouldn't reduce learning and skilling to a YouTube academy. It's a big danger that we have at this point in time. You say, oh, why do you want to go to a school? You can learn the same thing in YouTube also. Oh, why do you want to get this skill? You can learn that on YouTube also. Let's not bring down everything to a few people who are teaching on YouTube and saying it's all free. Why do you want to? A lot more happens in learning than just reading a book or listening to a lecture. And that is completely missing in the conversation completely.
Interesting. Mahesh, Career 360 has been publishing data on this for years. Give me the real number of the students who graduate from Tier 2 and Tier 3 colleges in India every year. What percentage are genuinely employable on day one? And what does the data tell us about the return on the investment their families made?
So, I think when we respond to such questions, we are trying to throw the baby with the bathwater. It's my perception, of course. See, the fact is this, that, and I've written this multiple times over, that 80% of colleges, or maybe 70%, you can always differ whether it's 70 or 80 or 85, colleges survive, and universities also survive because they have the degree granting power. You take it away from them, they don't have a right to survive, they should die, right? It doesn't mean that everything else is bad. There is certain thing that works out. Now, that is the failure of the system that makes it such. Like I've argued many a time that after 4-year graduation or a 3-year graduation, if a skilling of 3 months can make someone employable, what makes you not include the 3 months as a part of the 3-year or 4-year course? This is a conversation that we have, right? And for that, obviously, there are multiple thoughts that come in, but that's a failure of the system that 4 years could not make you employable, but someone from outside, a skilling company comes and says, I'll make you employable by adding the 3 months part of it. Ideally, it should have. Now, we cannot question the failure of the system to say education is bad. And two, education is not transactional. That's something that we must always remember. This ROI that we keep talking about, it is good up to a point, but bad after a point in time, right? If someone is fleecing you, then you need to question ROI. But if someone is actually making the two ends meet and still trying to ensure that you have the best learning, best environment, best ecosystem for you to learn things beyond the classroom also, then that is not bad investment. So let us not bring down every time when I use ROI, by the way, B schools may, it really happens that people talk of ROI and all. As I said, it is good up to a point, but after a point in time, it's pretty jarring because, listen, if you want to be a faculty, if you want to be teaching someone, you want to be paid also. And there is a cost attached to good learning and creating a good learning environment also.
Very interesting. Saurabh, you sit with students and parents before they make the decision. The family in front of you has saved for years. The child has scored 68% in class 12. The best college they can access is a private institution with a fee of 6 lakhs a year and an average placement of 22,000 rupees a month. What do you tell them? And more importantly, do you tell them the truth even when the truth is not what they came to hear?
The truth is why we have a business. If we do not tell the truth, they would not be coming to us anyhow because they already have their relatives and their friends and their batchmates giving them career advice anyhow. Career decision making is a very individual effort, which is in countries like India and North Africa and Middle East and so on. It's a collective decision. It's a family decision, right? Because a lot of it is riding on money as well. Now, when you're investing money in a student who is not yet performed at school level, right, that means the traditional academics probably do not work for that student. Then why would you push that student into a college which might not be, the best available over there? Why would you do that? Now, is there a way that student can still achieve success? By the way, it doesn't depend on your college degree whether you achieve success in life or not. The recent figures in S&P 500 companies, you see the number of CEOs, they're coming from, the maximum number of CEOs have no college degree, right? So it doesn't depend on the college degree. But then, are there other avenues available in a country like India where they can get quality vocational education? ITIs in India are plenty, but their enrollment ratio is much lower than regular colleges. The reason for that is because the society or your influencers, they tell you that if you go to a college, you will somehow get a job. And that will not happen because this is not post-liberalization India where companies were sprouting up like crazy and they needed anybody with a college degree to work. So no matter what you did, from where you did, you would get a job. But we are not in that India anymore. Now, companies are becoming choosy because of multiple reasons. IT job recruitment for the last 4 years has been dropping every 30,000 jobs or something. So when a parent like that comes in, we'll probably tell them, and this is something that we regularly do, we ask them to go for a gap year, do some skilling courses, or go for a foundational program within the college itself so that the student comes up to the level for an academically rigorous, 3-4 years that they're going to go for. The other part is, why are they looking at college itself is the basic question. Why are they not focusing on the fact that the child or their student has not performed academically? What went wrong? Was it because after class 10 they chose a subject or stream which was not fitting, but they chose it because of societal pressure or something else? Is it something that which is actually stream independent, like design or something? Can they focus on that? Like I remember in the last session that you had with the students, one of them is a designer, right? Now, why did she go for fashion design when there could probably be others? So we go deep into that, help them understand which design program is available, which engineering discipline is available, which medical program or surgery you should go for. That is how nuanced the process can be. I hope that answers your question, Ravi.
I'm coming to you, Mahesh. I want to ask you something the young people last week could not answer. When a student pays 4 to 8 lakhs a year, what are they actually buying? I mean, not the brochure answer, the real one. I mean, is it infra, faculty, a network, a credential, or something less tangible that takes years to understand? What is the real value of Indian higher education and who does it actually work for?
No, I think it is all of that and more. It's all of that and a lot more. Like when you actually get into a college, you also get into being called the alumni of a particular college. And some of these colleges have hundreds of years of history. So wherever you go, you'll find someone who hold your hand if you're down. I know a cousin of mine was, she went through maternity and then she came back and she put it in an alumni group and she found a job within 15 days. That's what a good college and a good alumni group does to you. The learning, the ecosystem, the network that you have, the alumni group that you have, and most importantly, wherever you go, you know that you studied in this particular college. That always carries a lot more weight. Again, I'll repeat, we are confusing what is taught in a skilling school to what is taught in an education ecosystem. And as long as we keep doing that, we'll keep comparing 6 months and 2 lakh rupees to 4 years and maybe 15-20 lakh rupees. That's not the way it works. Because the richest people also send their children to schools and colleges. Why do they do that? And when they come back and say, listen, I've understood this a bit more. And then they start. Now, at some point in time, you can say that the boy can or the girl can say that, listen, I've learned 1 year work than what I did for 2 years at MBA. That is true also. It's actually true. But having said that, if you've not gone through that journey, then this learning might not have been so amplified as it is otherwise.
There is something the young people last week said that I think deserve a direct response. They said the degree signals discipline and effort, but does not signal ability. And that hiring is shifting from certificates to portfolios, from percentage to proof. Mahesh, is that true? And if it is true, what does it mean for the hundreds of institutions whose entire value proposition is built on the credential?
No, I think that I've answered it earlier also, that, quite a few colleges in the country obviously survive because they have the degree granting status. If you remove the degree granting status, they would not survive. And to that extent, even the skilling would also be the opposite of that. That at some point in time, if a bad economy comes in and they can't place, then they'll also fall apart. It's happened in the country. Remember, go back to about 7-8 years back, there were a lot of skilling companies that were there in the country. Some of them closed down also because it did not happen. See, anecdotal evidence is not the way you should go ahead. Much of what we're talking about is boys and girls who've done very well despite not having a credential or a degree. But it doesn't prove the thing. Like Nikhil Kamath is successful without a degree doesn't mean that everyone can be a Nikhil Kamath and vice versa, right? So credential is very, very important. And to that extent, now within the credentials, you actually have people who believe in certain kind of credentials versus another bunch of credentials which are not believed in. So that also is very clearly happening, right? That when you know that even a distance learning degree coming from a certain kind of a institution is much more valuable than a 4-year offline degree that is coming from a certain kind of institution. So people have found their way out in the whole thing. But to a certain extent, when you're dealing with scale, when you're dealing with, for example, wanting to recruit 1,000 people or 500 people, you would want to have some filter to say, okay, I will start talking to these kind of people. Of course, for designs, for some professions, there is a portfolio that is possible. It can be photography or design or even technology where you go to GitHub and all. But it's not possible for everything. And that is something that we must be very careful about, to say that everything is a part of a portfolio. Not everything can be a portfolio also, beyond the point.
Sort of a question that gets to the heart of why this debate is so emotional. When a parent invests 30 or 40 lakhs in a degree and their child graduates to uncertainty, who failed them? The college, the system, the child, the counselor? And should career counselors in India be having a fundamentally different conversation with families than they are currently having? What's your take on that, Saurabh?
So I have multiple things to say about that. In fact, what I will say is, there's a very famous saying, it takes a village to raise a child, right? So it's the responsibility is the entire villages. It's not one person or one institutions. Secondly, when we talk about a college degree, I would like you to think about it from different perspectives. In 1969, when the US was able to send, astronauts on moon, the entire computing power in that NASA control room was less than the computing power that your iPhone has. Now, it's up to you. What do you do with that computing power? The university's job is to provide you that computing power, that ecosystem. Now, whether the student is capable enough or interested enough in using that or not is on the student. At the same time, it is through the motivation from professors, from family, from friends, and so on. The second perspective is, college is for who? Who are we talking about? Which students are we talking about? Only 5% of India has money right now. 95% is still not there. Like 10% of India, only 10% of India earns more than 25,000 rupees per month and more. So when we talk about the underserved populations of the country, they're one of the major ways of upward social and economic mobility is college degree. Because of that, they are able to move to the next level in life, because of which their further generations are able to benefit from it. The third part is, India can only be compared with two other countries in the world, right? China and the US. And if you look at the gross enrollment ratio of students in China and US, they're both around 60%. Why? And India is around 28%. Why? Because the world is becoming more and more complex. Because in a complex world, students will have to learn more, to understand more. They will have to be multidisciplinary and so on. How much of that can be possible on your own? I don't really know, because I haven't seen a lot of cases like that. How much of that is possible in a structured environment? Probably more. Now, the government of India itself wants, through NEP, to increase the GER by 50% to 2030. Indian government wants more students to go to college. There is a reason for it. Because the world is becoming more complex. Because we need more structured support. Because now, currently, a person who's employable, the age for that employability probably has moved from 23, 24 to 28, 29. Why? Because you need more knowledge in order to survive. So these different perspectives tell you why college education is important and why most people probably fail at taking advantage of that college education, apart from all the other factors that Maheshwer already said, alumni network, connections, peer group, and so on and so forth. So I hope that gives you the answer.
So I'll just add to something here. Ravi, as long as we keep comparing the most successful cases from a skilling perspective to the failure of those who could not make it despite a degree, we'll always be getting to a bad, equation. At this point in time, what are we talking about? We're picking up a few people who are extremely successful, but do not have a degree, and comparing them with lakhs of people who could not get a job. We're not talking of the guys who got into a job and are doing fantastic because of the education. That's the first part of it. Two, the problems of the world are not about, how skilled people are and all. I think the problem of the world is that skilled people don't understand humanity to a certain extent. If you don't have an overarching perspective about many things in life, which is about the world, you need to learn history, philosophy to understand how technology can be used, and so on and so forth. There was a very beautiful thing that a Stanford graduate wrote, and I would want to read that out to you so that you understand where I come from, right? And this is a Stanford graduate, by the way. He's a math major. He says, and his name is Hamza. He says, I'm a math major at Stanford. I'll be the first to tell you I'll never solve a partial differential equation for work. But why is that the standard we judge the value of learning by? This whole idea, it's not applicable in the real world, is silly. College isn't a vocational training program. It's meant to provoke your curiosity, to expand your horizons. If you want real world learning, go to a boot camp, trade school, etc. There is nothing wrong with that. But trying to turn college into trade school is stupid. Besides, all the useless stuff you learn in school teaches you how to think, how to analyze a problem, how to weigh different perspectives. It's not a surprise that the smartest people I've met in business also happen to have a lot of useless knowledge. It's because curiosity shouldn't be constrained by capitalist pursuit. Paradoxically, if you let the capitalism restrain what you learn, you end up losing. You end up being a very non-interesting person with little ability to think laterally. Soon an AI agent will be able to outperform you. Go read about philosophy, math, history, whatever intrigues you. Who cares if it makes money? It will make you human. And that's a Stanford math major who was writing about this.
Interesting, and that is why it was important for us to hear the other side. I mean, because last week what we saw, where the students shared their perspective. So I think glad we're doing this, and now I'm going to ask each of you the question I asked the youngsters last week. If you had an 18-year-old in front of you today, not a hypothetical student, your own child, your own younger sibling, and if they said, I want to skip college and go straight into skilling, building, learning on my own, what do you actually tell them?
No, I'll still tell them to go for skilling while going through the formal education process also. I would not let him just do a 6-month, 1-year trade school and then jump on to some job. I will not let him do that. I'll push him into a 4-year thing where he learns the skills of life, where he understands how he must stay in a hostel, how he must clean his bed, everything that comes as a part of the learning along with that. And you can always add skill to that. But I would not let him pass out of class 12, do a 1-year skilling program to say that he'll sit along with me and run my company. No, I'm not going to do that.
How about you, Saurabh?
First, I will like to understand the student much more. I would like to understand where this question or this motivation is coming from. What are the natural aptitudes and personality like? The aptitude might be there to do math, but the personality is not ready to sit down and practice. There is no point doing it, right? If you want to do skilling and continue without any other structured higher education, go for it. But then you need to be like one of the students that you interviewed last week. They need to be ready to do that. If they want to be, let's say, a career counselor, great, amazing. But what are needed? What are the things needed for a career counselor? You need to understand psychometric assessments. You need to understand psychology, development psychology, social psychology, how to do rapport, effective communication skills. I did my computer science engineering from NIT Jalandhar. And then once I realized, okay, this is not something I want to do, then I pursued masters in psychology from IGNOU. Now, second decision was a very conscious decision because I wanted to learn those skills and I wanted validation of a degree. The first education was not completely my choice. I was pushed into it. But did the college help me? Immensely. It allowed me to do iterations of things that I want to do, things that I don't want to do, have discussions late night in hostels with professors. Now, if a student is going on the skilling route, he or she needs to understand, it might be a lonely path. Are you ready for that? Do you have a cohort, or will you be ready to build a cohort online or somewhere else? Young people are amazingly resourceful. But are you ready to do or replicate the same quality which you will get in a higher education institution on your own? If yes, go for it. No doubt about it.
One last thing, Ravi, I think that's very important what Saurabh talked of. See, I'm a chartered accountant. I was an investment banker first job, then a media person. Then I became a career counselor or started being an entrepreneur, and now I also do career counseling. Now, if I were to just do a skilling, which is accounting and finance, this pathway that opened for me, would it open is a big question that you need to understand, because our pathways are diverse. They keep opening as you keep moving up the ladder. If you're just a skilling person going through a trade school, there is a great possibility that your growth will get stunted and you will not be able to explore different paths that open up as you keep moving up the ladder. My opinion.
Interesting. And a lot of students reach out to us. I mean, they write. A lot of curious parents come to us every year through various different means. I want to ask you on your personal opinion on the gap year. What are your thoughts on gap year? I mean, should one take it? Should it be a mandate for all the students coming out of different kind of schools? I mean, you talk about IB, you talk about Cambridge, and then state schools and CBSE. What are your thoughts, Mahesh, on the gap year?
So if the student is confused, of course, you can go through certain kind of a journey. But I'd always want the student, now gap year essentially means between formal education, there is 1 year in between. But my simple thing is, don't sit at home and do nothing. When you talk of gap year, you will do something. It's just that you're not going through a formal education process. That's what I mean by gap year. If that is the case, it's fine with me that, this child is learning something else before he catches on to something else later. But to be sitting at home saying, I won't do anything and I'll just think about what I would do in my life, that might be a big question mark for me.
If it were to up to me, I would recommend a gap year for most Indian high school students. The reason for that is, till high school, our students are not allowed to think independently at all. They are forced into a system and they have to perform, otherwise college admission will not happen. They are not able to develop their personality. They're not able to develop their choices. Whereas if you compare it with the West, where students have started doing their part-time jobs at the age of 11, they know how to manage money, they know when to say no, they know when to react and how to manage their time. Indian students don't know that. They are extremely sheltered. Right? Doesn't matter with socioeconomic background also, by the way. Indian parents keep their children sheltered, period. In order for them to actually become adults and not just have a stamp of 18 years and, voting certificate, in order for them to become adults, they need to explore things. Before joining a college, and that is probably where a lot of this frustration from Gen Z, Gen Alpha comes, that you never gave me breathing room, either in school, and then immediately college started. Where is the breathing room for me to explore myself, right? I would recommend that. However, I am completely against, blanket statements and blanket policies. It still fits into every student's individual aspect. Some students need a gap year after class 6 because they're outliers. Some students need a gap year after class 10, class 11, some after class 12. Some students might need a gap year after their bachelor's. Now, when does that happen? Through very, very nuanced, customized guidance, right? That is what my recommendation would be. However, I completely agree with Maheshwar sir, and actually, we are very fortunate that we're living in a time where there are so many industry certifications available for just class 12 pass outs. So they should invest not only in personality development primarily, but also developing some kind of knowledge about the world. It can be sociology, econometrics, it can be, history, archaeology, whatever it is. Do something. Become a chef. Do something.
Fair point. Let me end with this. Last week, 3 young people told you what it felt like to walk into the system and ask whether it was for them. Tonight, 2 people who have spent their careers inside this system tried to answer that question from the other side. And here is what I noticed. They did not entirely disagree with the youngsters. They disagreed about the solution, about the timeline, about who is responsible, about what is realistic for most Indian families versus what is possible for some. But nobody in this room said the system is fine. Nobody said there is nothing to fix. And that is the beginning of an honest conversation. Because we cannot fix what we are not willing to name. The real problem in Indian higher education is not that college exists. It is that we have allowed too much of it to exist without accountability, without quality control, and without honesty about what it actually delivers. And until we fix that, the question of whether college is still worth it will keep getting answered the hard way by the families who paid for a promise that was not kept. Education should not be a delay. It should not be a default. It should be a decision made with honest information. We are not there yet, but conversations like this one are how we get there. Drop your views in the comments because the real conversation starts after this ends. This is the Education Verdict. Straight questions, real answers, no fluff. Co-powered by Class Sathi and Sun Enterprises. Good night.